Welcome. It's called the Hump Day Podcast, by the way. I didn't tell you that. Welcome to the Hump Day Podcast. It is Wednesday, June 18th, and I have another guest this week, a very special man who I've known, and you guys will know, Mr. Pete Soucy, a.k.a. Snook. That's a well-beloved character here.
He's been going a long time.
He's been going a long time, yeah.
I guess the fact that he's been going for 25 years says something for him. He hasn't been run out of town, at least.
I actually had a video VHS of Snook.
Yep.
I don't know where it's from or when it's from, but I used to have it years ago. It's probably from like the mid '90s.
Yeah, there were two. I collected all the stuff I had done for television, and it ended up being actually quite a bit of material back in, I don't know what that would have been, maybe around 1996 or something like that. No, it was before that, actually. 94, 95. Anyway, it turned out to be Snook Unzipped, and we just put it out on a home video, as was the format then. And it did very well. I remember being really stressed out because it cost so much to do it in terms of the manufacturing and the design and paying royalties on the material, and then there's shipping and all the different things added up. And I had pretty much everything I had maxed out, all my credit cards, and I knew then, I calculated that I had to sell, I think it was around 3,500 copies to break even on that thing, and I was sweating bullets, let me tell you.
Did you break even?
We actually sold around 12,000, so we did.
Oh,
okay.
Wow!
Yeah, we were very lucky, and that was a whole new learning experience. So it was, I guess, it was a little insight as to how all that kind of marketing and product world works, and also a really quick course on how business really works for that kind of thing. Anyway, and then I did another one called Sincerely Snook, which was essentially a recording of a stage show. I did a one-man stage show, and that would have been just a few years later. We recorded it at the LSPU Hall over a couple of nights.
This one I think I had.
Unzipped, yeah, it was a full show, one man, and we had to do an awful lot of editing, and it's a different kind of beast, but that did well as well, so we're quite pleased.
It's when you first started, was the Snook character, was that when you looked at stand up, was it like I want to do a character, or did this grow out of time? Like, did you just start as Pete?
I was just doing theater, really. I was I had done a lot of theater going through high school and in Halifax, where I went to the art college. And when I got back to Newfoundland, I was teaching. Visual arts primarily, a little bit of theater, a little bit of literature. And so when I decided to take a break from that after 4 years, I just wanted to create some visual art. That's my training. I had some exhibitions here in town. And I wanted to get back into some theater. And I was very lucky. There was an awful lot of activity at that time. So I was just taking parts and doing as much designing as I could. Whatever anybody needed done, I was there. I'd do posters, I would design sets, act, direct if it came along. And I got this one part in this play down at the LSPU Hall where I had to develop a character, really, for a downtown corner boy. Mm-hmm. So I got together with some friends who grew up here, because I didn't. I grew up in Gander, pretty much. And they grew up downtown, and they sort of give me some tips and insight on how this guy might look and sound and move. And so I kind of developed this in front of the mirror, really, having no other way to do it. And it was, I guess I'd have to call it a hit. The play was a hit, but also the character was a hit. I immediately got interest to show up, after dinner speaking comedy, really, stand-up comedy. So I had to write some material. I was already using all my own clothes. Yeah. And so I just wrote some material and started there. And I thought at the time, I'll be lucky to get a couple of months out of this. This would be great, the little sideline. And it lasted, it's still going today. So it really became, I guess, one of the first stand-up acts. And all of the early stand-up comedy acts in Newfoundland were characters. Real true stand-up hadn't really arrived, and didn't really until, I would think, Sham Jumner is probably one of the first true stand-up comedians to come out of Newfoundland, not that long ago, really. So it sort of evolved from there, but I had never thought I would end up being a comedic entertainer of any description, but it just seemed to happen that way.
So, like, stand-up wasn't a thing that you love watching coming up, or?
I did. Oh, absolutely. I had the Bill Cosby albums, and I was a big fan of Firesign Theatre, Monty Python, of course, and whoever I could get my hands on, Richard Pryor. We had our heroes, but it just wasn't done here. Nobody did it. And yet there was an appetite, clearly. There were an awful lot of conventions and corporate work. And because there were so few people doing it, Amy House was doing it, Glenn Downey did a little bit of it, Bernie Stapleton, and me. And, very few people outside of that. So the phone rang a lot. When I started doing it and the word got around, especially after I started to appear on TV, on Here and Now, doing the weekly commentaries, there was a ton of work. I was probably on the go 4 or 5 nights a week.
I gotta say, when you released your first parody of Christmas songs, man, I listened the hell out of that. Like that to me at Christmas time was the thing. Like bingo balls, man. Every time it got me laughing every single time.
Yeah, it's surprising. It still seems to work and to sell. Again, I had no estimation of how it was an idea I had, and I had sort of shopped it around. I said, nobody's done a CD of Christmas song parodies, and I had talked to various people about doing it, and there seemed to be some interest, but no real thought that it could ever be anything. So I just decided to do it myself and got together with George Morgan, who was a friend of mine and a musician and producer and whatnot, and we got some good musicians. That was a good move. I was just going to do these 2 karaoke tracks. I thought, it's only fun anyway. But we decided to spend some money and get the good guys in.
Live music.
We're talking Sandy Morse and Patty Moran and Bill Perry, and George himself, of course, and lots of other people. And worked really hard, and it was kind of weird doing it in, I think, April or May, doing the Christmas CD. But boy, that thing, I guess it was just the right timing. It was the right size for mailing, the right price for a gift to send to somebody. It was a bit of Newfoundland. It was Christmas, and it took off. I think we're probably around 30,000 in sales on that thing, and every year I get feedback from people saying, it's driving me crazy. The kids have been playing it in the car for the last 3 months, and I know I'm going to be listening to it for a couple months.
Did you rewrite each one yourself?
Yeah, it happened really quickly. I mean, I just looked at the most popular tunes, and I think probably over 3 or 4 days came up with lyrics.
Wow, for all of them.
Yeah, and it was, and we did some last minute editing on some of that writing. But it was a bit of fun, really, and we got some great singers in to do some choir kind of, and just recorded, several tracks of them singing some backup choir stuff, which added to the hilarity of it, because it's just the context, It's so incongruent to have these ridiculous lyrics and have a legitimate choir backing you up. So it worked out really well, and again, it was an exercise in how to market and distribute, because we did most of our own distribution. And oddly enough, I sold most of my product at like Canadian Tire and Irving stations, whereas true musicians go through music stores.
And did you had a kids album that came out, which I also purchased, which is still.
Yeah, well, there are 2 Christmas CDs now. We did a second one, and the kids one was something I thought, well, if you can do parodies of Christmas songs, there's a lot of kids songs that might be a bit of fun, and so we did that. That was great too, and went over really well. And I always had this idea, and we actually started to do it, but I got kind of worried about the whole, I guess, livelihood of CDs, as a medium. We started to do what was going to be original songs, but in different genres, and parodies on those genres. So a country song, a Newfoundland song, a rock and roll song, a blues song. We actually did the blues song, and it's called Oh Baby Baby, and it's just really a parody of all blues songs. And obviously it was a lot more work because we had to come up with the music as well as the lyrics. And I kind of ran out of, I don't know if it's steam or confidence on that somewhere along the way. We actually did a music video for that and everything. It's on one of the DVDs. There are 2 DVDs of it as well, as you might know. But so you get different ideas, and sometimes they're you'll take the risk and put in more out of naivete than anything, and other times I guess you sort of size it up and wonder if it's really the right time.
So when you first started, I guess, or even since you've started, I asked everyone this that who are comics that come on. Can you remember a time when you were it's probably like the worst time? Maybe you bombed, or maybe you got just heckled. Like probably the worst performance that you've had, that sticks out in the last 25 years?
Boy, it sounds like I'm making it up, but I have never really had a solidly horrible time. There have been great gigs and not so great ones and whatnot, but I've been pretty lucky that if you can read your audience and tailor your stuff and figure it out as early on, either before you get on stage or very quickly once you do, you can sort of mitigate the potential damage. I've never really had a horrible time on stage. And I often wondered, what I would do if I did. I do have the luxury of hiding behind a mask.
Mm-hmm.
When you put a character on, you're somebody else. You're not yourself. And I envy people and I admire people who get up there and just do straight stand-up. I don't know if I could do it. I've never tried it. I probably should. It is a whole different beast. But when I put the character on, he's somebody else. He's seen as somebody else. He has a different attitude, and he has a lot of the attributes that I think are necessary to make for successful stand-up comedy that I perhaps don't have. He has, for instance, a likability because I think largely of his attitude, his lack of malice. He's here for a good time, not a long time, a real what odds kind of mindset, and that serves him well. And I wonder if I got out there and wrote material strictly for myself. Now, I'm not saying that all stand-up comedians don't do something very similar. I think we do have, however subtle sometimes, a stage persona that's not exactly us. And that's, it's a matter of degree rather than kind, perhaps. But clearly, for me, it's a self-preservation kind of tactic to put on this character and go out there and whatever he suffers, I'm free of.
Yeah. I look at that. Well, like whenever I do like a play or something, because there is a comfort behind a character that you can't have with yourself. Because people get mad. It's a character. It's not. You know what I mean? Like it's not me just doing it.
Yeah.
Because if you stand up, I look at like if I'm doing play, and you forget a line, you flub a line, or just say you're doing a comedy and the play just isn't funny. It's like, well, it's a character. As opposed to, like, if I'm doing stand-up, it's my own material.
That's right. And people get that now, and they understand that, and they do separate it. But, of course, years ago, it wasn't like that. I mean, people saw and believed everything they heard and saw on television or in film. And the guys who played bad guys were, ridiculed and ostracized in their real lives.
Yeah.
People just couldn't sort of make the separation. And to some degree, I suppose, that still can, exist because people, when they meet me sometimes as myself, they're Snook fans, but when they meet me, they're kind of instantly disappointed because they expect me to be on and to be like that all the time.
Yeah.
And
well, that's not even your voice.
Acting, right?
Yeah, it's not even your voice.
No, and they sort of quickly say, oh,
you're not him?
Oh, what a drag. He's not that.
Yeah.
That guy really doesn't exist, at least not in this guy.
Yeah, not in reality.
Yeah.
Who is, you probably definitely answered this over the last years, but who is this Dougie character? Is this someone that you know?
Well, he's named after the guy that I got most of my kind of insight from. A friend of mine, Doug Sharp, who grew up downtown, and I knew him well at the time, so I said, give me some first-hand experience here, who this guy might be, and he really helped me figure out who the guy is, and the guy I wanted the character to be. A fellow who is always out for the laugh and doesn't mean any harm to anybody. And I think it's important that you don't have any malice. I think that's really important. It's much funnier. Very difficult to make malice funny. True intent to hurt people or hurt someone. So anyway, and his name is Doug. So I decided early on that I wanted to have a side character who I could tell stories about, who I could, I guess build different scenarios around. And it just so happens that it's very handy to have someone to blame things on. So if something very risque or somewhat suspect has been said or something has been done, Dougie did that.
Yeah.
Dougie said that.
That's a good way to find a laugh and not put the blame on no character.
And everybody, Dougie's very real to people, and they all have a different one. That's why I've never shown them, because, everybody has a different one in mind, and I think it would ruin it for a lot of people if I actually said, this is the guy I've been talking about, because it's not who they've fabricated in their mind.
Yeah.
It's much more powerful if they've come up with it themselves.
Oh, it's like a scapegoat. It's like a personal scapegoat.
It is. It is. It's a fictitious character, but he's very real, and they imagine him in different ways, and that's powerful. When you get people investing of themselves, bringing something of their own imagination into your work, they're really invested in what you're doing then. They're really sort of part of the whole show. And I found it in many ways to be, by fluke, a very good move on my part early on.
Well, that's really smart. That's really smart because you're giving them a personal connection without giving them a connection.
Yeah, and
like they do to connect.
And I've got another guy on stage with me all the time that I don't have to pay.
Yeah.
He doesn't show up.
No royalties for Dougie.
Dougie doesn't get a cent.
What's okay? Well, I asked you about the heckler. Have you ever had a crazy fan?
Oh yeah, I mean we've all had those people.
Do you have one that stands out?
Who are there? There are a few that stand out, and for the most part, I think I've been able to. The character has skills I don't have. Like the character is much faster on his feet than I am. Perhaps he comes up with stuff, and I'm standing almost to the side, saying, "Wow, that's a good singer. I'm glad you came up with that, Snook." And he can sing much better than I can. Whatever it is I'm doing with my throat when I come up with the Snook voice lends itself to singing much more successfully than whatever I have personally. But he handles people pretty well. Again, it's important to keep any kind of intent to injure out of it. But a few people have either thought that they were the show, and there are always those people out there that they figure, they're lending something to it, or they want part of the spotlight. And then, of course, you always get people who are just perhaps too inebriated really to be there and to be of much good to themselves or anybody else, And I can't say I've had a whole lot of it, but a few incidents kind of stand out. And for the most part, they've perhaps almost added to the show rather than detracted. And we've all experienced that too as audience members.
So if, let's say Yuck's asked to do a show at, on a weekend, but you had to be Pete Soucy and you had to rate,
I don't do that.
You wouldn't do it?
I haven't. Not to say
if anyone,
never.
Say if $1 million, well, not $1 million, but they're offering you a big, hey Pete, if you do this, man, you can just do it as yourself. We'll give you I don't know, $50,000.
I don't think it would be about the remuneration. It's really just about a decision in my mind that I want to experiment and see if it's doable or how I would fare. But I tell you,
is your illusion you don't want to break, by doing Pete?
No, it's just that I've gone now for 25 years using this tactic, which has been my kind of tool to perform and to entertain. To start off now at my age and to take the risk and write the material and just to go out and begin that process, that's a young person's game. You have to take your licks and earn your experience honestly and early on. I think I really think that it takes a whole different kind of energy to figure out all those things. Not to say it couldn't happen, and lots of people have started a stand-up career later in life. But where I'm already kind of very happy and content with what I've got going and developed and earned over the years in terms of the regard people have for the character. I don't know. I've always been curious, but I think it would be a tricky thing. I really have to push myself to do it because it's a gamble, and it means real work again. Maybe I'm lazy.
Well, do you think it'd be harder to write personal material as opposed to character material?
Well, I think so. I think I just understand the whole cook Snook material and the
that's his evil brother.
Yeah, there you go. Snook and the Cook. I think I understand, and it writes itself almost. When I sit down to write something for Snook, it just flows out. To develop my own thing, I've got to discover that and evolve that and earn that, difficulty over time. So, I think it would be very difficult and very different for me to come up with material that I would say as Pete Soucy, as myself. And I'm not sure I care to find out if it could work.
No?
No. I tell you, I've got there are 5 boys in my family, 5 boys, 1 girl. 4 of my brothers, I would say 3 of them are much funnier than I. And one of them in particular, I think would be an instant success on stage. I think he has not only the ability, but the kahunas to do it. I think he could get up and understand how to work a crowd. I would be probably number 2, and that tells me perhaps that that's something at this stage of my life I'm not interested in doing.
So I just always, I guess I always just assumed that Snook was a character you developed after trying stand up without it. But it's interesting that you haven't.
No, I mean, I haven't really, outside of theater, done much in the way of comedy at all, except for being the class clown and, playing.
Were you always funny, though? Was that always the thing that you got?
Relatively, I suppose. I mean, I always enjoyed getting response, and, even in my teaching years when I would do things at variety shows and whatnot, it was great to be able to, feel that reaction from the crowd. That's a real kind of bonus, or I guess a real kind of confidence booster when you can do that. You feel good. They feel, you've made them feel something. You feel good about yourself. But it was never my intention to be alone on stage. It's a much bigger deal to be out there and to take it all on. Because I tell you, in comedy, there's one thing. You get your review right away. Mm-hmm. You don't have to wait for the paper tomorrow. You know the instant you lay down that punchline, if it doesn't sell,
yeah,
it's on you right away.
So I noticed that we don't have a festival this year. Is it?
No, it's not that there's no festival. It's moved to the fall.
Oh, okay.
It's scheduled for October right now, but there are a few factors that will determine really whether it goes ahead or not, because it's a precarious kind of business. It's a small market, so it's a labor of love, really. And what we're trying to do on an annual basis is break even, essentially. Mm-hmm. And it takes an awful lot of things to go right to make that happen. And so right now we're still kind of on the fence as to whether or not we have a broadcaster. We've got all sorts of forces in play that, depending on how they turn out, it'll either be a delay in the festival. We did want to try the fall. June has proven to be a particularly tricky time to do it for a variety of reasons, venues being one of them. The Arts and Culture Center
summer always seems
booked up with dance, dance school programs and whatnot. So we wanted to try the fall, but if it doesn't fly in the fall, that doesn't mean it's necessarily over either. It might be just a year off.
Do you have you don't have like any comics or anything in mind, or?
Oh, I have lots of comics in mind. I have lots of people I've always wanted to get here, but it comes down to their schedule, our budget. Mm-hmm. A million things come into the mix. And it's a pretty small festival. We have as a mandate that we feature an equal number, as much as we can do it, of homegrown talent, not necessarily still living here, but homegrown talent, and people from elsewhere. And we've been fortunate, actually, to have gotten the people we have. I mean, if you told me 5 years ago that we would have Louis C.K. here.
Man, I'm kicking myself over that, because when he came here, I wasn't a fan of him.
Yeah.
And then shortly after, I really got into Louis C.K. and I was like, oh, he was just here.
Well, he is pretty much at the top of my list right now, and I'm just delighted that we could get him when
and
we
you
could
met him.
afford him. Oh, yeah, we had a great time, and he was super, and it was really a fluke. We had Cheech and Chong all booked to come, and, put him down at mile one. And at the last minute, either they decided they didn't want to come or had a better gig or something, but they threw all these extra conditions in that really made it impossible to do it. So I was scrambling, and I looked around and somehow came up with a contact for Louis C.K.'s agent, and checked it out. And sure enough, on short notice, he came and did a great show. And we've had Dan Aykroyd, and we've had the Trailer Park Boys, of course, and lots of other folks that I'm a big fan of. Still, Derek Edwards is one of my all-time favorite comedians, and he was here. And so we've been lucky, and it's been great so far, but it is a challenge.
One of the comments I like to see here is, I actually went to see him in Halifax a couple months ago, was Bill Burr.
Yeah. Huge
fan of Bill Burr. But I don't think he'd ever come here unless someone brought him here.
Well, we could very well bring him here. We've talked about Bill Burr many times, and lots of others as well. And we've gone after a few people that we just haven't been able to hook at the right time. They're tied up in this and that. And there comes a point in many of the comedians' careers where they're just outside of our range. Unless we're going to try to pull off a big stadium show, which really kind of becomes your festival because it robs from anything else. So you're either going to have one big show, or you're going to have a bunch of smaller shows that give people a variety to choose from. And if we were to bring Martin Short here to do a one-man show, Fame Becomes Me or one of the many shows he does, I think we would probably have very little outside of that to add to our festival.
So do you watch a lot of comedy?
I probably don't watch as much as I used to, and I don't know why that is. I mean, I have my favorites, and my son is a big fan, who he's your age, went to school with you. He's a big fan of a lot of comedians, and I probably watch what he's interested in, and we're generally pretty much in line in our likes and dislikes. But I'll bring people to him, and he'll bring people to me, and we'll watch that stuff together. But in terms of just turning on the TV to watch a festival or comedians, it kind of happens by accident. I don't go looking for it. Most of my research I do online. I go to people's websites. So
is that like how you stumbled over Louis C.K.'s comedy? He just kind of came up?
I don't recall. I think I may have seen him on Letterman or something first.
Okay.
And thought, wow, this guy is doing something new. And that's happened many times over the years. You just sort of happen to be watching when somebody great and somebody new is coming on the scene. Now, he was performing a long time before I ever saw him. Yeah, I mean, it happens in different ways, just as it does with everybody.
So what's your view on how can I word this? You have a lot of comics that just dirty acts or just excessive cursing or because I would picture if you as Pete Soucy did stand up, you'd be a clean comic. Would I be right in assuming that?
Probably so. I mean, it's not about staying away from stuff. I think whatever's funny to you, if it happens to be a little risky or a little out there or a little profane or whatnot, so be it. I don't know if I would dictate what I chose as material based on whether it was clean or not. I think it's just whether it's funny or not. I think too often comedians include it because it is profane, not necessarily because it's funny. Because it's not
more
necessarily the same, not the same thing. No, I mean, what's funny is important, and what will play with an audience. And you adjust for your audience. I mean, they're your customers. They're the people who you're trying to entertain. And if you're doing material that's not entertaining them, then you're failing at your job.
Yeah.
So I've done the same material, and it alters significantly in terms of. I mean, Snook has been a little profane at times. You don't see it very often because that context doesn't arrive very often for him. But I've been hired to go into a show that is notoriously out there, and I will serve up what I think the audience is not only prepared for but almost demanding.
Yeah.
And if it serves the material, fine. If it doesn't, I've also been in a context where everybody else is black and blue, and Snook comes out clean but still does very well because it's about the funny.
Yeah.
It's not about the harshness of the material. Now, we put on Nasty Nights as part of the festival now and then, and brought in comedians specifically because they excel in those dark corners and whatnot. And audiences come out for those, because they're not afraid and they're looking for something that's really going to be different. So you try to please all your different audiences, and variety is the key there.
So if the festival went ahead in the fall, would you guys do the workshop again for young
Probably.
comics?
I think that's a worthwhile thing. It doesn't really serve the festival in terms of economics because it's a loss type of scenario if anything, right? Really, it doesn't necessarily or very often break even. But I think it's important because it gives young aspiring comedians an opportunity to learn and to get, for many of them, their first opportunity in front of an audience, and a very generous, warm, forgiving audience, which is I think very important to the early experience of comedians.
So that was intimidating, man, seeing someone like yourself in the audience watching. It's like, oh, Pete's out there. Oh, no, John Sheen's out there. Not Trent McKellen's. Oh, my God.
We all had those experiences, too.
Yeah.
Every time I'm on stage, I'm aware if there's somebody in the audience who has, my respect or has far more experience or, so you're always second-guessing yourself, but that's critical to pass those tests. You've got to do it sometime. And generally speaking, anybody who's gone through that themselves gets it and are, understanding what the comedian is going through. So you have to remember, even though they're out there, they're pulling for you.
Yeah.
They're on your side.
Do you still get nervous when you do stand-up?
Not really. I wouldn't say. There are times, and it depends mostly for me on if I understand the scenario I'm in. If I understand the context, smaller crowds are far more anxiety-inducing than bigger crowds.
Yeah.
The bigger the crowd, the easier it is. And if I'm prepared, sometimes you just wonder if because I try to write a portion of my show specific for that audience sometimes. And if I'm hired by a big corporate event or a convention or whatnot, I will try to do an awful lot of research and talk to them and get some individuals and issues and things going on perhaps that affect them and write a portion, maybe 20% or something of my show specific to them. And that's the kind of thing you really want to have prepared properly, because you can't go in and try to pull that off if you don't know what you're talking about.
So you do a lot of crowd work, improv, like just off the cusp?
It happens, and it happens more sometimes than others. You can't control the show entirely. Generally, I'm going out there with, although I hope it doesn't seem this way, it's pretty scripted, and I know exactly where I'm going to go and how I'm going to lace things together. But you make changes on the fly, and you have to respond to what happens. And if something goes over really well, and you can sort of spin on that for a while. You get some guy going that they all know, and you've got a particularly good anecdote on him or something, and you can, I've written material on stage that I've used elsewhere too. Just spontaneously you get a 5-minute bit out of improvising on stage, and sometimes that ends up being some of your best material.
So over since you started, who would be probably the coolest person you've met in the industry? Whether it be Louis C.K. or Shama Jumner or...
Oh boy, that's
a question.
Great question.
Maybe it's an idol. Maybe you met Bill Cosby when he came.
No, I didn't. I didn't meet Bill Cosby. Dan Aykroyd. I grew up watching Dan Aykroyd the first cast at Saturday Night Live, so he was a real treat to meet. And Louis C.K., of course, was an all-time favorite. So. Outside of that, because I haven't really done a whole lot of traveling. I did for many years early on, but I've never really had to. I've been able to stay at home and work for the most part. So it's really kind of been the people I've met here. I have tremendous respect for Lorne Elliott, who did Madly Off in All Directions for CBC for so many years, and I probably appeared on 12 of those. And the original cast of... Air Farce, when they were doing radio, I think it was some of the best writing, and they did so much of it. And Roger Rabbit, Lou Begoy, all those guys were very good and very good to me. And Kevin Blackmore, who I grew up with, in Gander, he was a quiet guy, a smart guy, a musician.
I've met him. Yeah, he is quite quiet. Yeah,
and he's a very, very smart guy, and he's done it extremely well. They've done for as long as I have done super work and made a living, a good living from it, and are just on top of their game. And they get it. They get how to give audiences not only what they want, but what they don't know they want sometimes. And they've been able to stretch, I guess, the acceptance of what audiences are prepared to accept sometimes. So I have a tremendous respect for anybody who can do it, who can actually, in a very small market, and Canada is a small market, let alone Newfoundland and Labrador, but who can make a career, sustain it, work hard enough to do it for any period of time, let alone for an entire lifetime. It's not easy, and anybody can do that, and all those people have. So
when you just say you've left the province in the past, but when you do you go as Snook? Do you have to alter where he's a Newfoundland character? Do you find you have to alter the act?
The only thing I've found I have to do is slow down.
So slow down.
People get it. There are Snooks everywhere. I had a fellow from Bulgaria told me that there are Snooks there. And the Irish have what they call teddy boys, and they're essentially Snooks. They're guys who hang out on the corner and who are a lot sharper than you expect them to be. And so people understand the character. They get it. Excuse me. But you just have to make sure they understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I slow down And sometimes I play with that. I explain things, and that's part of the act that you don't understand everything I'm saying, but I don't mind explaining it to you, and I can make fun of you a little bit lightly in a way that's not going to offend you, because we all have this connection here. We all get it because we know the culture, but they don't.
So where did the name Snook come from?
I tell you now, I was looking for a name when I decided to go out on my own. I didn't use the name that was in the play, but the name Snook always appealed to me as a funny name. And I actually met a guy when I think I was actually teaching at the time, and he was in a play. He was a student in a play from another school, and his name was Pius Snook.
Pius.
And so I just ripped off his name.
Yeah.
I've actually revealed that Snook's first name is Pius in the one-man play. I did, and I apologize. I've met him since and apologized, and he's fine with it. He said, "No, that's great, not a problem."
Send him royalties?
Yeah, I should. I probably owe him some royalties. Yeah.
Oh, man, I wear contacts and they're drawing my eyes out. It's horrible. You have contacts?
Yes, I do.
It's horrible, Pete.
I know, it's horrible.
It's horrible. I'm trying to go off the whim here. I'm trying to. This is getting too interviewy.
Keep your eyes closed. It's radio.
They can't see me. It doesn't really matter.
Podcast.
Oh my god. Have you done any? Is this your first podcast?
I think it is. Really, I mean, a podcast is something you can listen to whenever you want online.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what it is.
Yeah, I'm getting it up on iTunes, so that way you can download it.
Yeah.
And just take it with you instead of just having to go to, whatever and look it up.
I would have to say this is my first podcast.
First podcast.
High time.
Oh my God,
Phil!
Phil!
You to do it. Thank you very much.
I feel so special. I would cry, but my contacts won't let me.
You're soaking up all the available moisture.
Yeah, it's gone. It's all gone. No, it's great. Who? I just forgot it right away. As soon as I was about to ask, I just forgot it's gone.
You're doing well, man. We're 45 minutes in here.
It's ruined. I ruined it.
You're surprising me.
You're actually good. Holy crap! I just completely forgot about it, Pete. So we'll just revel in silence, I guess, for a little bit.
You can edit a podcast, can you?
I can edit, but I don't edit.
Don't?
No.
Just let it go?
Yeah. Same when I do the radio. I don't, just like if I pre-record an interview, I tell the guy, I'm like, hey, I don't edit. And so whatever you say is going to go on the thing. Unless they curse.
I'm sure something would happen that would cause you to edit.
No, nothing. No. Nothing is I mean, things have happened, but I'm like, it's going out there.
I think that's an unnecessarily strict
yes.
guideline you've set for yourself there, my friend.
I've the only one I've edited was the one that it was up last week. It'll be last week once this comes out next week with Steve. Mm-hmm. I had to edit something with me and Steve, but that was it.
Would you like me to say something that you would have to edit?
No, I'd keep it in.
Well, I won't say it then. I demand edits.
You demand edits? Do you want this edited? It's funny when I did an interview with Rick Mercer with the radio show, and I was like, yeah, I don't edit, Rick, and he laughed. He's like, you don't edit? I was like, yeah, I don't edit. He's like, all right, well, that's good. That's good to know.
Much better to know that up front, absolutely.
Yeah, I won't tell him afterwards.
The assumption is that there will be edits.
Yeah.
If anything doesn't go the way you would prefer it. But,
no, I'll just flick it out there.
Yeah, it's nice of you to tell me this 3/4 of the way in.
Oh, I don't edit, Pete. I don't.
Yeah, great.
You've been great, sir. You haven't said anything that I would edit out.
No, well, that's your opinion.
Well, I mean, if you see, that's the thing. If the guest like after we end this, if the guest is like, hey, I wasn't really comfortable when I said this, can you edit? I'll edit it out. But like, if no one says anything, I don't think he needs editing. I won't edit.
I'm not the least bit worried about the 6 people that possibly will hear this. Do you have any idea how popular they are? Yeah. Any numbers? Yeah.
Well, it depends, I guess, on the guest.
See, that's not a reflection on you by saying that. I'm just thinking that there's probably not that many people interested in listening to any portion of an interview with Pete Soucy. Now, perhaps if I was here at Snook, there might be a few who would,
I don't even know how to interview the character.
Well, the character has been interviewed far more than I have.
Has he?
Oh, absolutely. Nobody wants to hear from Pete Soucy.
Wow, how do you...
If I'm doing something on radio, they always want to talk to Snook. If I'm promoting the comedy festival, they don't want to hear Pete Soucy promoting the comedy festival. They want Snook to come on.
So have you ever been interviewed
Like
what I'm doing, like just asking about the character as yourself?
Yeah, I have, absolutely, no question. In print and on radio and cable TV and whatnot, and even some main interviews on regular mainstream media, TV. But generally speaking, there's a limited tolerance for that. They have a lot more stamina for Snook.
I think geez, if someone's been doing a character for as long as you have, it's such a likable cultural character that I would want to interview the man behind it, see how it came about.
Well, good, because that's what we're doing.
Yeah, it is. That's what we're doing. All right, enough about you, Pete. We're Snook. Yeah, I'm done now. I don't know a character. Well, I think a lot of comics. I know a few local comics here started out with characters, and it's just. I think it's just a guise when you first start, because stand up is so daunting to go. I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna tell my opinion to a room full of strangers.
Well, a lot of people really frown or look down on character comedians, and there have been a lot of them. There are far fewer now, because starting way back with. What's his name? The name is escaping right now.
Logal?
No, a fellow from used to be on CBC Radio all the time. I can't believe I can't remember his name. But anyway, there are many famous ones over the years that have endured and gone on. Sometimes they come out of programs as one of the characters used within the program, and lots of them have gone on to be the staple, income for a lot of people. That is the character they do, and it's a tried and true way to go about it. But over time, it has become seen as somewhat hokey and backward and dismissible, essentially. And that's fine. And there's an awful lot of truth to some of that. It is what it is, and I hate using that term because it doesn't mean anything. But it's something that is not for everybody, and I'm aware of that, and that's fine. A lot of what I see in stand-up comedy generally is not a whole lot different. First of all, from character comedy, it's just again a matter of degree rather than kind. And regular stand-up is not for everybody. Regular stand-up is without any kind of facade or character or whatnot, is depending on the individual.
Yeah.
It'd be far more entertaining if they were somebody, because they're not that interesting.
I've met people who, like I've said, hey, have you been to a comedy show? And just say, no, I don't like comedy. It's like, how do you not like? Do you not like smiling? Like I guess I get I can't see it from the reviews. Like, how do you not like comedy? Like any kind of comedy?
They have a preconceived notion of what comedy is. But if you say, watch this, and you pay somebody who's really top notch and is not sort of offensive to their sensibilities, they'll go, oh, I like that.
Yeah, but all the rest is
so it's a generalization to say I don't like comedy. They don't like some comedians and some forms of comedy, some styles.
I always blows my mind. Like people say they don't listen to music. It's like, what? What do you listen to? NPR? What do you drive around listening to? Book on tape? I don't understand what people listen to, and they're like, what do you listen to?
Yeah, what they mean is I don't like certain kinds of music that don't appeal to me.
Yeah, but you're like, all of it. I haven't cursed once yet. Wow, this is something, Pete. You're bringing out my clean side.
Clean me up, man.
Bringing out my clean side. I don't even do a dirty act. I think I just curse sometimes out of nerves. It just comes out.
I've seen comedians who I know to be clean comics, essentially, what you call a clean comic. They will follow somebody who had the crowd rocking and they just happen to have a lot of profanity in their act, and all of a sudden they will insert all of this profanity for no good reason, and it doesn't work for them.
Yeah.
I've seen, young girls go out there and assume that you have to be this way to work on stage, and it does nothing for them. On the contrary, it actually ruins any chance they have of being successful. And in being successful, I mean making people laugh. People don't. It's not the right fit. It's not the right context. It's about your material, your insight, your timing, all those things, the quality of the writing, the delivery. It's not about the profanity. That is a tool that you use or don't, depending on whether or not it's going to make a laugh.
Yeah. Well, I spoke to Steve Patterson about it. Is like, I think if you're going to curse and interact, I mean, I'm guilty of not taking my own advice out of nerves or whatever, but I think if you're going to curse and interact, it should emphasize the joke. It should help it. Mm-hmm. Like you just said, someone went up and they're clean and they're cursing. Like, that never helped because it's not their act. It's like, hey, went to the fucking supermarket. It's like, why'd you need to say that?
Exactly.
You went to the supermarket.
There's only one joke that Snook has ever really used that regularly includes...
I just cursed
and
the first time.
And I'm about to, too. And this is the joke. And it really works well because it is the only time, and people don't see it coming, they don't expect it from Snook. But for a long time, and occasionally I'll still throw it in depending on the context, there's a joke where Snook says, I have this banjo. Snook has a banjo, and he says, now, I don't really know how to play this, and Dougie thinks I'm cracked getting up here trying to play it when I really don't know how. And I just say, Dougie, you're forgetting about the most important factor. I don't give a fuck. And because you don't see it coming, because it's uncharacteristic, and because it's in that context, it works. And that's the only time, and only because I knew it was going to, serve the joke.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work when I say, if you're getting the most important factor, Dougie, I don't really care. That doesn't work.
It doesn't have the punch.
It doesn't have the punch. And unless it's going to have or serve the material that way, why do it? It's diminishing your material otherwise, I think.
Yeah, well, yes. It
has a sense of desperation about it. Like you say, I went to the fucking supermarket. What does that do for your material?
Unless it's a supermarket of fucking. I mean, I can't see why you'd put the fucking there. No laugh, Pete. Good. That's why I haven't made any jokes. It's very daunting to talk to you about. Okay.
Sometimes just because I'm not listening.
My worst failure. That could be it. That could be it so far. You just haven't tuned into me.
I'm listening to my material.
I listen to my answers.
Yeah.
Just a coincidence that they're answering your questions.
Yeah. What'd you say?
Exactly. One of the things when I first started out, because one of the first comics I met was Trent McKellen, who's if you guys haven't heard about him, look him up. He's hilarious. And he's from Newfoundland, Cornerbrook, and he told me to cut the fat, which is very simple, but it's like it's one of those things that people don't really think about. You know what I mean? It's like, oh well, I have this. Why isn't this part works? But the sentence beforehand is kind of like, oh, try to cut. Oh, now it works even better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You might end up with 2 minutes instead of 5.
Yeah.
After 2 really
tight
minutes. Like Bill Crystal said, he said it took him 20 years to come up with 20 really solid minutes. Mm-hmm. But he used that 20 minutes for 20 years.
Yeah.
Because he's obviously going everywhere and he wasn't using it on television at that time. Television will kill your material because everybody's seen it, heard the joke. It's not like music. You can't tell the joke over and over. Absolutely. And it's hard to do that sometimes because you are always looking for content. You're looking for volume of material. You want to be able to go up and do 45 minutes. You want to be able to create a whole new hour per year, like Louis C.K. if you can. Mm-hmm. But it ain't easy. And it's tough sometimes to cut what is like essentially a 2-minute preamble to a joke down to what it should be, which is probably 20 seconds maximum to a joke. Because now you got to come up with a lot more material, and it's hard to come up with the timeless, ageless gold. You can write a joke about something that's happening now, but the commentaries generally on NTV are pretty easy because you're talking about what everybody's talking about that week. Yeah. And you refer to it, they get it, they understand, and you can throw it away. But to come up with something that's going to work today, next year, 5 years from now, that's more difficult because. There are only so many shared experiences we have, so many different angles and flips that you can build into a story, a narrative, or whatnot, right? Writing is a very difficult thing. Sometimes it comes easy, it flows out, but generally if you're going to be disciplined and work at it every day, which you have to do, you're going to throw a lot of stuff out. That's just the way it is.
So do you try to stay away from the topical humor when you write stuff for Snook?
Well, it's there are different kinds. There's something that's only good for this week because there's something happening that's going to be ancient history. Nobody's going to know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. There's some things that are good for a couple of years. I mean, you can write material about Muskrat Falls for a number of years now, and people are going to be, ready to hear it. Other stuff is about human nature, and that's the stuff that you can use for years and years and years, decades. And I do have certain material that I could use today, and it would be every bit as relevant, and people would get it and enjoy it as much as when I wrote it, 10, 15 years ago. So there are different categories, and sometimes you can, evolve a piece or reignite a piece by adding a new angle on it, or making it about something else. I've got jokes about premiers that I started off when I was talking about Roger Grimes, or actually Brian Tobin before him. I go back even farther than that. I guess the first joke probably I ever told might have been about Brian Peckford. Yes, absolutely. I started doing material about Brian Peckford, and then some of those jokes I've just made about the premier. That's
you just change the name.
That's right. I've got a song that goes. I don't know when I wrote it, but I probably when Brian Tobin was in, and the song goes. The premier came on the TV news. I can't even remember the rhyme now.
What the hell? See,
yeah,
Pete, you might tell me a limerick.
Yeah. The premier came on TV news. The stuff he said was lying, or something like that. And the difference between Brian and God is God don't think he's Brian. So I've just changed that. The BS was uncanny. The difference between Danny and God is God don't think he's Danny.
Yeah, you just changed the word. Yeah. That's smart. Is you're finding resourceful ways to reuse your fossil fuel. Oh no, I was trying to get science.
I think you're gonna have to do some editing here.
Yeah, I was trying. No, people think I'm stupid anyway. I'm trying to use some science. I'm an art student. My major is English.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know why I said fossil fuels. That's nothing to do with anything.
No.
Oh, you want some toast? Have some fossil fuels.
It's a topical term that you can insert anywhere.
Fossil fuels.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's one of those things.
Climate change, fossil fuels.
One of those things. Your
Carbon
acts.
emissions. That's another one.
You're bombing on stage. Hey, what about those fossil fuels?
Yes.
Right?
They're a drag, aren't they?
What about those? Man, I was trying to see about this last week, but I had probably the worst time in the 5 years since I started stand up a couple of months ago, and I was just bombed like 100%. 100%. You've seen me do kind of bad, which is embarrassing, and John's seen it. That 1 year, I was like, oh shit.
I don't recall that.
Oh, you recall it. You just don't want to say I did. But a couple months ago, just
maybe we have different definitions of bad.
No, I came off. You and John were sitting next to each other, like, how did that go? And I was like, yeah, that. Yeah.
Well, you don't learn until you take risks, and this is exactly the context where you want to.
It is. It is. I did. So I'm going to repeat the story now, but I did this staff party at the Breezeway here, and the act that I did that night was the act that I did at Yucks the week before, which worked. I saw my new material. I was like, okay, it's a good set. I'm going to do this next week. And so I was one of the comics that was asked to put the show together. Well, got asked to be in the show, and I did it. Right away, as soon as I walked in, you sense it. All right, bad. This is going to be a bad one. This is going to be bad one. The lights were on.
But that's where you have to adjust.
I tried.
Change gears.
And I tried. I failed. The lights were on. The PA system was crap. You could see just people, just like splotches, just like this group over here drinking, this group over here talking, eating, laughing, whatever.
Yeah.
It wasn't even like rows, just like a table here. And then there's a spot over there in the corner of people laughing about their crap. And so the comics that went up before me were having a hard time and a rough time. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I gotta get up and I gotta do this. And it's one of those times where it's like, who wants to be a comic? Screw this, I want to be a painter. Like, I want to leave. This is bad. I got up. Nothing I said was working. I probably had like 10 minutes. Maybe we did 5 or 6, and I just yanked myself off. Like, it was just such a bad. I laughed. I called like 10 of my friends.
Sometimes there's no way. I tell you, one of my worst. I went up to a huge thing in Halifax. It was a sports celebrity thing, and they had some big comics there, and it was a huge room, and they had all these Steve Garvey and all kinds of biggie wigs, and it was something they did every year, and in this first night there were 4 or 5 of us set to go on one after the other, but they had this massive crowd. They had all just arrived there from everywhere. They all kind of knew each other, so it was all meeting each other, and they had the bar in the room, in the hotel room, in the big ballroom. The bar was in the room, so they all hung out at the bar, and there was so much noise that at least nobody worked. If I had gone up and bombed and everybody else worked, it would be one thing. But I went up, and every successive comedian after that went up, and just it couldn't work. And there were people in the audience trying to listen, and they actually, it got really heated because they were screaming at the people at the bar to shut up, and the people at the bar were indifferent and oblivious to it. And it was just a horrible night that didn't work for anybody because they put the bar in the room. If they had it out in the hallway, it would have been a completely different thing. But there's nothing worse than going up with 10, 15, 20 minutes of material, and within the minute one that this is not going to go anywhere. And you're expected to do your time. Mm-hmm. It's no good to say, something, folks, this is not going to work tonight, and it's nobody's fault. But, have a good one and leave, because they're expecting you for the set amount of money to do this time. And so you have to try to go through. And it was I'd say I forgot about that time. That was perhaps the worst ever. And what can you do?
I always find that it's an interesting dynamic when you have when the tables within the room start heckling each other. That happened a little while ago to show Yucks. This guy would
fist fighting each other.
Well, I've never seen that, but this guy was talking right in front, and one of the comics tried to dress like, "Hey man, you should keep it down, whatever." And he kept talking, and he had a table over here. He said, "Buddy, shut the fuck up!" And it's just hilarious to see. It's like, so now you're getting heckled from your own people, the audience. They're heckling you now.
Well, I was at a Halifax Comedy Festival very early on, when maybe the second or third year that they had a festival, in a bar downtown, and there was a guy in the audience who was heckling the guy before me so bad that the comedian jumped down off the stage and went down and beat the face off him. And people had to haul him off.
It's a well-known comic?
I knew him. I don't know how well-known he was, but he was actually from Nova Scotia, not from Halifax. But anyway, he went down and got into it, and they had to bring all the bouncers in and clean it all up and kick that guy out. And it was forever before. And then I had to get up. So I kind of made some material out of that, and it went fine, right? But boy, oh boy, I'd never seen it before or since.
That's just weird, hey?
Yeah.
You think you'd be able to handle him? Because, as a comic, you should be able to handle him as, with words, just shut him down there. But, when he gets to that, it's like, was he saying personal? Did he know him? Was he saying personal, your mom, whatever? Was he saying personal stuff?
No, I think he was just a guy who had a few in him and started to, shout out some stuff, and the comedian tried to handle it. But within 5 minutes, it got to the point where there was nowhere to go except to go down and punch a guy in the face. And I didn't expect that to happen, but everybody was glad it did.
Yeah. Well, he was telling me last week how he seen one time at a show 2 old ladies get kicked out.
Oh, yeah.
2 old ladies. Can you imagine? Yeah. Apparently, the club, whoever it was, told them that they, you're being too loud or whatever, and then they addressed the audience. The guy said, Hey, this guy is telling us we're laughing too loud. Can you believe too loud? We're laughing too. Can you believe it? At a comedy club, we're laughing too. And he just voluntarily got up and left. It's like, all right, well, you were probably just talking. You just can't. Your hearing is going. You're talking too loud.
Yeah, you're allowed to laugh. You're just not allowed to be part of the show.
Oh, the heck!
I was at the LSU Hall one time when Greg Malone and I think it was Janice Spence were on stage doing a funny play, and there was a guy in the audience who was talking and yelling out stuff, and everybody was, getting really upset with him. So, and he obviously had a few drinks. So he got up and noisily sort of left the theater and went out through the door. But 5 minutes later, he came back in through the door and was at this point falling down. Probably whatever he drank hit him. And Greg Toomey, without missing a beat, in character, went over and put him over his back and brought him across the stage to the exit and laid him down outside the door and closed it. And the place just went up.
Wow.
It was a standing ovation for 2 minutes, and then the play continued. So
that was during the play?
That was during the play, yeah.
He just stopped the scene?
Yeah, I think he was still saying his lines as he carried the guy across the stage and put him out through the exit on the side of the theater.
Wow.
Yeah, that was classic.
That's a professional, I guess, there.
Yeah.
Is he still doing a lot of work?
Greg Toomey? He was on Codco and has done. I think he's still doing some writing these days for Codco. He hasn't been on the show for a long time, but as far as I know, he's in Halifax and doing some writing for not Codco, for 22 Minutes. Sorry, he was on 22 Minutes. Yeah. He's still doing some writing for them, but he was something else on stage. He was a performer, very funny.
I can see that Annie Jones at a show recently, a new one.
Yeah.
He had a thing of. Did you see it? Catch it?
No, I haven't. Which one is that?
Oh God, I know. I don't know what it's called now, but I remember seeing like, and he's doing another show.
Something new?
I think it's something new.
Oh,
yeah. Maybe it's not new. Maybe
new. But
I know it's new, but he's doing something. He's doing something here at the hall.
He's always doing shows. He's got 3 or 4 things he does, and he does a lot of those like puppet shows now, right?
Does he?
Puppetry, yeah.
He does puppetry now?
Yeah, well, his wife manipulates the puppets as he narrates the story.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Jack in the Manger and those...
I like the hall?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Queen, was it the Queen of Paradise Castle or Island or something? I don't know. But, no, he's done them everywhere across the country, and they're...
Oh, he's successful, yeah. He was one of my first guests on the show, Andy.
Oh, Andy,
great guy.
Andy's a rare talent. I put Andy in the same category as I would, Ray Guy and Rick Mercer, comic genius. Kevin Blackmore, I think, is a natural comic genius.
I'm surprised that Doyle hasn't incorporated Snook into the show. And now's the last season, so maybe it's your chance now. You get Snook in there.
Surprised. I think they sort of want to steer clear of what would be perceived as stereotypes. A lot of people have difficulty with the character because they see it as a newfie caricature or stereotype. But I don't, I reject that. The newfie caricature or stereotype always includes some sort of stupidity, and I've never seen Snook as a stupid guy. I think he's disarmingly insightful. Mm-hmm. I'd like to think. But no, it's a completely different thing, and they've stayed away from doing too overt, although they've strayed there, I guess, from time to time. And actually, there was some interest at one point about Snook potentially being a character on the Trailer Park Boys.
Oh, really?
And that would have been fun. That would have been interesting, but who knows? It may have been a disaster, but I can see him fitting there because I don't think he perhaps would stand out as too big, or too overdone a character on a show like that.
Well, Pete, we're at an hour and 2 minutes.
Look at that.
We did it. I got the little thingy here.
Yeah.
We did it.
You're going to have to edit 2 minutes.
I did the 2 minutes out now.
I can tell you the 2 minutes I would.
I have to edit all of it. So the first, when I introduce you, all the rest is edited. I'll edit it out. I'll save your name and people know. Oh, Pete was on, I guess. He didn't speak a lot.
There you go.
Just had me going, here's Pete. All right, guys, this is podcast. See you later. There we go. That was good. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure, sir.
And we did. I never even had anything prepared. Isn't that awesome? I tell you, every time I finish one of these, because I don't prepare for the podcast. Every time I finish one, I'm like, wow. Like I did one with Manolis, 2 hours. There's nothing, just spoke. Well,
it certainly gives you an unknown and honest product in the end.
Yeah, I don't edit.
You don't know where it's going to go. You don't edit.
It's
very brave of you, and brave of me, I should say.
It is. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll see you again next week, and thanks again to Pete.
All the best.